Now they're still questioning whether ethics should be a part of our job, but I really cannot think of any job should be performed without ethics.
Hello, I'm Magali Laguerre-Wilkinson. Welcome to Ethics in Business in Their Own Words. ACCA, the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, has teamed up with Carnegie Council and CFA Institute to produce this interview series launched in 2018 for Global Ethics Day. The series features global business leaders exploring how businesses are preparing for an ethical future in the face of challenges presented by globalization, technology, and human psychology. Today, we're talking to Hiro Mizuno, Executive Managing Director and Chief Investment Officer of GPIF. The Government Pension Investment Fund, or GPIF, manages the reserve fund of the Japanese public pension system as one of the largest pension funds in the world. GPIF is the largest public fund investor in Japan by assets and has a highly diversified and long-term portfolio. To make its return sustainable for its beneficiaries, GPIF takes initiatives to promote so-called ESG investing, integrating environment, social, and governance factors into its investments. What role does GPIF play in the community?
Well, we are managing the fund, which has its beneficiary, basically every single Japanese over the next several generations. So our major role in a community is to secure their retirement life.
So you're saying the fund. This is not any fund. Explain a little bit what this fund is. It's the largest fund in the world. So could you tell me a little bit how it got to that?
Well, GPIF manages the Public Pension Reserve Fund, and we are sole manager of Japanese Public Pension Fund. And at the moment, we have $1.5 trillion under management. And then we have a globally diversified portfolio.
It's pretty impressive.
By size, yes.
You were awarded the Outstanding Individual Contribution in RI Innovation and Industry Leadership 2017. Can you tell us a little bit about that award and what did it mean to you to receive this?
To be honest, I really don't know why I received that award. But if I can think of something I have done, also GPIF have done to make the change to the industry, was we actually challenged the conventional business model of asset management. And then when we started our ESG campaign, the most commonly asked question was, is this your job to save the planet, or to make the society better, or do anything other than making a better return than the market? But we really challenged our business model, saying, GPIF owns about 8 to 10% of the Japanese equity market, and we own about, probably just shy of 1% of the global, equity index. And then I started questioning, the traditional evaluation model of the asset manager is like how you beat the market. But we thought beating the market meaning beating ourselves, because we are the biggest owner of it. And also, we realized that according to the consultant, asset manager never beat the market for like 10 years in a row. So we started questioning whether that business model was right. And then we came up with the concept of like a universal ownership. We own the universe. So if we own the universe, we cannot beat the universe. So we should pay more attention to contribute to make the universe more sustainable. So I think that's probably the reason why we became one of the opinion leader in this market. And then, I think I was regarded as a leader, or like, the opinion leader in that shift of the approach. So, I really don't know exactly, but I just thought the GPIF need a little bit more like international recognition, so we received it with pleasure. But that's what I thought.
And based on the model that's clearly so successful, and maybe you were maybe it's the humility also, in which you don't seem to boast about this too much, but clearly it's very successful. How do other global powers look to you? Do they look to you for advice in that regard?
You mean the global asset management powerhouse?
Yes.
For my peer asset owners, I try to communicate with them, trying to get them, sort of make them join our campaign to challenge the other conventional business model. And even before we started this, the movement or initiative, there's a market level consensus amongst, or like consensus among the asset owner. What the biggest problem in today's capital market is the short-termism, right? But I thought that nobody's actually walking the talk. They talked about the against short-termism, but the way they build the business model is promoting short-termism. So what we have done is like introducing like a multi-year contract for asset manager contract, and that's the concrete action to get rid of short-termism from our investment chain. And those kind of things, I think we started getting a lot of support from our peer asset owners. And then also the concept of universal ownership. According to the Harvard Business School professor, we are the first one who took that concept out of rusty textbook and use that into practice. So universal ownership, we are getting a lot of support. And I noticed even attending a lot different conferences, other asset owners started using universal ownership to convey their message. And then the other things we are started, I think, getting traction is like, we started using a long-term investment as an acronym to short-term investment. But we came to realize long-term, everybody has a different definition, right? So, well, actually, when I made a speech at the CFA Institute conference in Hong Kong, I asked the audience and other panelists, what's your definition of a long term? And somebody said 3 months. The other said 30 years. So of course we cannot agree on things if you have that kind of different time frame in mind. So we started using like cross-generational or intergenerational investment. And that's actually exactly reflect the GPIF mandate. But that's actually resonate well with what people mean, particularly like a big asset owner mean by long-term investment.
Is being a responsible investor an ethical decision? How can you help investors make those decisions?
That's one of the most interesting characteristics of this industry. When we started our ESG campaign, the most commonly asked question is whether it's against my fiduciary duty to consider ESG and also ethics. And then ESG, after 3 years of debate and the actual work by GPIF, we started getting very little pushback from asset managers. But our question is how they're integrating that into their business is actually they're still questionable. When it comes to the ethics, I think that's really interesting to hear asset manager or even my team questions me whether we should have any ethics in doing our job. I think that's such a interesting question to ask. The reason why is, if asset manager's job is to evaluate and meet the CEO of the companies, right? If they, let's say he or she, CEO, tells the asset manager he has no ethics in his job, do you think it's acceptable? And I don't think it's acceptable. Nobody will say it's acceptable. But on one hand, we all agree, all the business leader, and even just one professional have to have a work ethics. But on the asset management side, we are questioning whether we should consider ethics when we do the job. I really don't understand where this discrepancy comes from.
Where does it come from?
I have no idea, because that's probably maybe a negative legacy of like a social responsible investment. because in the past, people just become so carried away by like a social responsibility, and they actually made a lot of financial loss. And they came to realize, the putting social responsibility in front of financial return is probably not, they're serving their purpose of existence, which is to make money for their, the clients. But I think that kind of sometimes, people learn from the past wrongly. And that's probably, I think, is probably the people learn that wrongly. And now they're still questioning whether ethics should be a part of our job. But I really cannot think of any job should be performed without ethics. This is my personal opinion. This is not the institutional view, but I strongly believe that no job should exist without ethics.
How do you implement that in GPIF? Is there an ethical standard to be a part of this?
Well, we have a code of conduct, but ethics is something is not written, to be honest. I think when you talk to the other corporate executives, you actually take it for granted, right? He or she has ethics, right? And so I'll do the same to our own investment team, and also the external money managers. I just take it for granted you have ethics, right? And probably only the gray zone is whether you want to use the investment to affect somebody else's ethics. That's probably the gray zone. But I'm tired of the people keep asking whether we should take ethics into account when we do investment. So that's what I do. But a lot of people still struggle with that the sort of classic concept of fiduciary duty. And my conclusion is, if you have a fiduciary of future generations, you have a different view. Mm-hmm. And then I actually made a speech at the Buenos Aires at the Investor Forum, and I talked about ethics. And I actually shared the quotes from 19th century Japanese philosopher, Ninomiya Sontoku. He said, economics without ethics is a crime. And ethics without economics is a fantasy. I really believe in that. And I think the Japanese, the society always had that kind of value embedded in our culture. So I really don't think it should be difficult for Japanese people to, have that kind of the work ethic. And that's how we were brought up here.
But that goes, I think, back to that gray zone you're talking about. Because somewhere along the way, you're almost on the precipice of something unethical.
It depends upon what you mean by unethical. But if it's unethical, it shouldn't be done.
How is GPIF helping with retraining management, employees, and providers to help them adjust to an increasingly automated world? Now we're going into that realm of technology.
Well, I like talking about AI. And then I think to be honest, over the last 3 years, or 4 years, I've been always frustrated. This industry, particularly, are too slow to adopt AI. Because if you think about it, the asset management should get more benefit by using AI than some other industries. So I keep asking asset managers how you are using, the AI, and then more, still very, the few positive feedback we receive from asset manager. They're still talking about, the AI still cannot do this, and the human judgment is required. But I said, come on, if you think about what you're doing, on a daily basis,
right,
it should be replaced by AI. But last year we started the joint research program with the Sony Computer Science Laboratory to find out how we can use AI to monitor our asset managers' activities. And just after 6 months, we made fascinating findings how the AI can help us. we collect all the big data from asset managers on a daily basis, but nobody has really used it. But now AI can actually monitor how the asset managers are actually trading.
So how did it help? What are the differences that you saw?
Well, we observed a lot of discrepancy. Like, the asset manager who says, we are long-term investor, our average holding period of 5 years, but actually they trade very frequently. One of the hidden agenda of that AI project is that I wanted to persuade my team that we should focus our effort on something not to be replaced by AI. So I have a strong belief daily monitoring of trading, or like even monitoring asset managers, the investment, will be done by AI. They would do much better job. Well, at least they can help us.
That might frighten some people.
Well, that may, but my advice to my own team is, when you become aware of that, the potential future, what you should focus for your remaining career. And that actually, I use it to persuade my team that the ESG is one of a few areas that the human can prevail. We are the biggest owner of Japanese equity market, as I said. But inconvenient truth of the ownership is we have no say in today's trading price because we don't participate in today's trading because most of the other equity portfolio you own almost perpetually. So inconvenient truth of capital market is owner has no say in today's trading price. Who has the say? Which is the person who trades the most today, right? And according to some statistics, which I don't know whether it's exact or not, but in like a New York Stock Exchange, 70-80% of daily trading volume is now made by machines, right? And those people has no opinion or no view on what kind of the society we want to live, what kind of environment we want to keep for our future generation. Machines don't care about it. And then also, they probably don't even know what each company is doing, right? So we have to face that situation. I mean, on one hand, we are talking about long-term investment. We want to get rid of short-termism. But if the 70-80% of daily trading volume is made by machines who don't care, don't have the long-term perspective, what the humans should do? And I have a strong belief that humans should focus on something, either involve long-term perspective, or the second is involve the value judgment. And then I think our team started getting persuaded. My vision was right because now they know the AI's potential. And so I don't think it should scare some people, but on the other hand, it actually just streamline what the people should focus on.
How is your company managing its impact on the environment?
Environment is the first letter of ESG, right? So we basically tell all our asset managers to integrate ESG into their analysis. And the second, we also ask our asset managers to select critical ESG issues and engage with their portfolio company on those issues of their selection. So I would be very surprised that any of our asset managers says the environment is not the critical ESG issue. So if they say environment is a critical ESG issues, we demand them to engage with the company. As we outsource 100% of our equity portfolio, we basically communicate with the portfolio company through our asset manager. And then our asset managers are required by GPIF to stay as our asset manager to engage with the company on ESG issues of their choosing. And my assumption is pretty much most of our asset managers should choose the environmental issue as the critical ESG issues. So we are expecting them to engage with the company to improve environmental impact of that portfolio company. For GPIF, as what we can do more directly, we started using the ESG index to improve the ESG quality of our portfolio. And several months ago, we introduced the Global Environmental Index together with the S&P. So it's the S&P Carbon Efficient Index. So that's the other index created to promote the company has higher carbon efficiency and discourage the company who has lower carbon efficiency. So we have invested more than $10 billion behind that index. So that's our direct impact on the environment.
I would say so. I would say that's pretty active.
The good thing about index, the using index, is that that we can actually affect the market. We send the message throughout the market, because by selecting the company by company or asking asset manager to actively pick and choose the environmentally friendly company, it wouldn't affect the market, because that's again coming back to my earlier point of you can beat the market by picking a good one, but to affect make the systemic effect, index actually has better the market-wide effect. So we have really have a the strong focus on the using environment and social governance, the weighted index to shift our portfolio. And the last one is we recently released our first ESG activity report, and in that report we try to disclose the carbon efficiency of our global portfolio, which has such a difficult work to do, because that we are sitting on the top of the food chain, right? So for us to collect the information, our asset manager has to disclose the carbon, or like a carbon footprint, or like environmental quality of their portfolio. And for them to do it, the underlying portfolio company has to do it. So we just cannot create the categorical report of the environmental impact. But by our doing it, we are sending a stronger message to our asset managers and also to the portfolio companies.
What is the greatest, we're coming back full circle, but what is the greatest ethical challenge facing GPIF and the industry, your industry in general?
Well, there's no one particular ethical challenge facing our industry, and also I believe every individual has proper ethics. But for some reasons, we create the market custom, or like it made like a sort of our market standard not to talk about ethics, or not to take ethics into their daily the job. That's probably the biggest challenge. And I really don't think when you ask the other the CFA the institute members, do you have ethics when you do the job, and what kind of ethics do you have? I still believe that everybody has one, but for some reason we created the industry custom not to talk about it. The other challenge we are facing is that this industry, people are very smart, and they are trying to do their job very precisely and technically right. But ethics is not technicality, right? They just need to have an overlay concept of ethics, overlay concept of like the morale. And this industry, we actually trying to insulate ourselves from those kind of like the high-level concept when we do the job. But I still believe that although they don't talk about it, they have one. But when why they cannot openly talk about it, that's my biggest question. And then one of the good example is I heard from somebody from the CFA the institute that because of fiduciary duty and all those like rules, this industry may need a regulatory intervention to change the behavior. That's one of the most sort of disappointing comments, because this industry is one of the highest industry and has been recruiting most intelligent students from the university and also MBA business schools for the last decades. And do we need to have the regulatory intervention to change our behavior. That's very questionable, right? So I was told several times that if we want to do ESG integration or ESG promotion more, we should work with the regulator to change the regulation. And that mindset, I just cannot agree. And that's probably the biggest challenge of for the industry. It's not about whether they have an ethics or the particular ethical the issue we face it, but it's more about the sort of holistical thinking of like ethics and moral and the professional expertise is something we just need to work out.
So to wrap it up, but as someone with a great career in finance and investment, and now you're essentially in government in some ways too, what does ethical behavior personally mean to you?
Well, in a way, it doesn't mean much. I think for anybody to perform, your job, you shouldn't need to ask ethics on a daily basis, right? This exactly I was trying to trying to just persuade my people. Like, if you have to question or discuss about ethics on a daily basis, there's something wrong with that business.